So today we're going to talk about carbon. Okay, some of the goals that we want to learn about today are going to be, I want you all to be able to explain why carbon is important for life, describe the isomers, and be able to describe the role of functional groups. Okay, one thing and key to remember is that carbon is the basis of life. So if you study organic chemistry, basically you are studying carbon. Okay, that is the backbone of organic chemistry. Carbon is very, very important in all fields of study. So whether you're going down the medical field or nursing field or any kind of science field, I would recommend taking organic chemistry since carbon is so vital. It's a very, very vital element in our everyday life. Okay, you'll learn a lot about carbon in organic chem. So proteins, DNA, carbs are all composed of carbon atoms bonded to each other and to other elements themselves. Cells are made up of 70-95% water. The rest is mostly carbon compounds. So basically, we are mostly primarily carbon. Carbon is a major component also of diamonds and graphite. And once again, carbon is the basis of all life. So let's go ahead and look at some characteristics of carbon that make it unique. Number one, carbon has 4 valence electrons. So with 4 valence electrons, it can actually form 4 covalent bonds. Remember, covalent is the strongest of all of those 4 bonds we talked about. Carbon dioxide is the source of carbon for all organic molecules in organisms. But as everything else goes, too much carbon dioxide is actually bad for you. It can actually leave you feeling very dizzy. It can cause you drowsiness, confusion, headaches, unconsciousness. It can cause you to sweat. And ultimately, it's actually going to cause you shortness of breath in your respiratory system, because if you have a large intake of CO2 or carbon dioxide, which is our waste product in cellular respiration, then that means you are not taking in as much oxygen as you actually need to survive. So hydrocarbons are diverse molecules that consist only, that is a key word there, only of hydrogen and carbon. So basically you have a carbon backbone, such as you have right here, carbon backbone, and then you have hydrogens attached to that. That is a hydrocarbon, okay? Remember, it's a carbon with hydrogens attached, okay? So there are only going to be hydrogens and carbons, and every time you add another carbon, it's a stronger or a different type of fuel. So for example, right here we have only 1 carbon, and this actually creates methane. It is known to be the weakest fuel, but it is still extremely explosive. If we add another carbon, it becomes ethane. Once again, a stronger fuel than methane and extremely explosive as well. Last but not least, we have ethene. Ethene or ethylene is actually a double bond right here between those 2 carbons. Mind you, when there's a double bond, it is even harder to break. So if you do break it off, it's a huge explosion. So this is right here of these 3 listed, this is the strongest of all of the fuels, and it's due to the double bond between those 2 carbons right there. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with the next kind of fuel, which is called propane. Propane would just be like we have a carbon backbone of 3 carbons. So remember how we were talking about how carbon has 4 valence electrons? Therefore, let's go ahead and count those real quick. Here's your 4 valence electrons, 1, 2, 3, 4, which also means it has a valence of 4, which means it can have room for 4 electrons right here. But all in all, the most important thing to notice here, these 4 valence electrons mean that it can actually form 4 very strong covalent bonds. So this is the different skeletal variations that are produced and with carbon, and it actually allows for molecular diversity. So right here, you can actually see that they can be linear, just like ethane and propane, just different number of carbons right here. They can also be branched, as you see right here. Now, branching, you can kind of think about it like a 1-story with 4 carbon versus a 2-story with 4 carbon. And double bonds, so like we said, double bonds are very strong and hard to break. Okay, this would mean that it is actually harder for for this butene right here to be broken versus this ethane that's up here. Okay, so once again, they have double bonds. And the last and strongest of all fuels, is if it's actually found in a ring structure. When it is found in a ring structure, you know it is very, very, very explosive. There's a really, really good chance of exploding. But also one key thing about the ring structure is also you could more than likely smell that actual compound itself because it has a very, very aromatic feature to it. So remember what we said earlier, what a hydrocarbon is? It is a molecule consisting only of carbon backbone with hydrogens attached, okay? So when we're talking about fatty acids, which can be found, for example, as along your plasma membrane, let's say. What a fatty acid is right here, these red and triangular structures right here, this is kind of be our glycerol backbone. So it's like a glycerol molecule, and then we have 3 fatty acid hydrocarbons attached to each one. So right here, those black triangles are considered like, let's say, carbon, and here's the hydrogens attached to it. So we have, like I said, 3 fatty acid hydrocarbon tails. So isomers. What you need to know about isomer is what exactly they are. It's when you have the same molecular formula but a different structure altogether. And so therefore having a different actual physical structure, like let's say this 5 carbon backbone right here that's linear, right here compared to this branched one right here that's still 5 carbon, but it's actually, like, remember I said 1 story versus 2 story. This one will act chemically different versus this one because of how the arrangement is done. So it has the exact same number of hydrogens, over here, exact 5 carbons, they're just arranged differently. That's what an isomer is, okay? We have different types of isomer. So the first type would be structural isomers. Like I said, a good way to try to memorize these would be thinking about it like a 1-story building versus a 2-story building, okay? Same molecular formula, just different structure. Geometric isomers, as you can see right here. Okay, these actually consist of having double bonds. If you see the double bond right there between those 2 carbons, and this double bond right here between these 2 carbons. But the key here is the one thing you want to look at is it has double bonds, but it has to do with the molecules on either side of the double bond and the form that they're taking. In other words, the first type we have is called cis, C-I-S. It basically means any molecule on either side of the double bond that are on the same side. So as you can see right here's the double bond, and here this X is on one side, this X is on this side as well. The other type of geometric isomer is actually a trans, T-R-A-N-S. Trans means that the molecules are actually on opposite sides of the double bond. So before we had it where they were on the same side of the double bond. Now here's a double bond, but we actually have them on opposite sides. So this is called a trans geometric isomer versus a cis geometric isomer. And you are going to want to be able to identify these, okay? The next type of isomer we're going to talk about are enantiomers. So enantiomer is pretty much basically a mirror image of something. They look very, very identical, but they are not the same, and you cannot superimpose one on the other itself. It would not be an exact match if you try to put them on top of each other. That's like your left hand and your right hand. They look very similar when you're looking at them, but if you try to look at both of them with the palms facing you, right? Now go ahead and move your right hand on top of your left hand with still the palm facing forward. Okay, they obviously do not match up. So basically your pinky on your left hand will now be matching up with your thumb on your right hand. Okay, they do not match up, so they are not identical. They just look very, very, very similar, like mirror images of one another. A little bit further about enantiomers. What actually they're doing is it has to do with some sort of reflecting light that comes from them. So most medications that humans take, okay, we're usually like amino acids and things like that, we're usually going to be wanting the L form. The L form, what it does, it actually rotates light and is very, very effective form in animals. If things were actually in the D form, you would potentially not have an effect that you would like from that particular medication that you are taking, because it would basically be biologically inactive for us. So, what are functional groups? These are the chemically reactive groups of atoms within an organic molecule. So what you guys want to know for these are, number one, functional groups are pretty much like, let's say for right here, example right here. Here's our functional group right here. The R is just an extension of a compound that can actually be attached here to this functional group right here. So these functional groups are actually what's going to give these compounds their actual chemical behavior with other compounds. So what you are going to have to know are the structures of each of these functional groups, and then know the letter symbol for it as well. So for example, we have hydroxyl group. Hydroxyl is a functional group's name. You're going to want to know that. And hydroxyl is basically if you see an O and an H attached to it. Remember I said the R group is, this one can be changed to any compound. This is any compound. Let's say we had a big hydrocarbon here. Then this is the functional group. This is what's going to basically tell us how this hydroxyl compound will react to other things. So, and also you would want to know that's an OH. So methyl, here we have methyl right here. You would know that it's anything with attachment of a CH3. Carbonyl, you'll have a carbon attached with a double O bond. How about, let's say, amino? Amino right here, you would have the R group attached, and then you should have a nitrogen, so just look out for nitrogen attached to 2 hydrogen. Phosphate, you know to look for that P, because none of these other ones have the P attached to it. And last but not least, sulfhydryl, it will be an actual SH attached to the R group or the extended molecule. So these right here are actually hormones, okay? So they give organic molecules distinctive chemical properties. Remember we were just talking about those functional groups? So as you can see, the estradiol hormone, which is very, very high in females, versus this male testosterone hormone that's very, very obviously high in males. We can see the 2 different functional groups right here. Right here, we have one functional group, and here we have another. So the key thing to remember here is just know that these 2 different hormones are available. Now, males and females both have estradiol, but females have a higher amount of estradiol available within them, especially in pre-puberty years. Okay, same thing with testosterone. Females, we actually have testosterone in our systems as well, just not to the magnitude that males have it. And a little recap of what we went over today. Remember, you want to be able to explain why carbon is very, very important for life. It's basically what we are made out of. You want to be able to describe the 3 types of isomers we discussed, and describe the functional groups and the role of them. Be able to recognize what they look like and know the symbol to each of them as well as their names. Until next time, I'll see you later and have a great day.